So Danny made a decision and he made it fast and he made it swiftly. And decision velocity is the next one at number 3. And this is the tension between certainty and uncertainty, which is variety. So decision velocity is kind of where the battlefield where certainty and uncertainty kind of have a fight. And low decision velocity usually means that certainty is winning and the person is waiting until you kind of feel safe, until it's safe enough to move. But high variety means you've got the opposite problem. You've got too many things on your plate, you've got too many options, but you're not able to make a commitment. Either way, decision velocity is where the tension between certainty and variety happens. So push motivations, you have two base motivations in life, push and pull. Push is what you don't want to happen. It's something painful, something you're fearful of. You might be worried about something bad happening. And most people don't do something until that house is on fire and the pain is so bad that it's extreme and they take some action. Pull is a desire to have more, to be more, to do more. It's not because you've got enough clarity or meaning, but it's the fact that nothing kind of changes. And everyone tells themselves it's out of reach or it might not be able to happen. So, and it's kind of like having a compass, kind of knowing where you want to go, but not knowing exactly in which direction it is north. Okay. So the diagnostic, we have kind of measures which one is running you and which one is pushing and which one is pulling. But ultimately, you want to find yourself in the middle, right? You want to make sure that you've got that tension right. But if you find yourself too much in the middle, then you're going to be pushing and pulling. It's going to be like a magnetic force. You know, when you put two magnets together, it's going to go nowhere, right? Because the forces are working against each other.
That's the same as the story of the dog that sat on a nail and
Exactly right.
he's howling and the guy keeps walking past him and he says eventually to the dog owner, he's like, why is your dog howling every day? And the dog owner says, oh, it's easy. He sat on a nail. It's hurting him enough to howl, but it's not hurting him enough to get off the nail.
So you're going to make decisions that are going to be delayed because you've got fear of maybe being wrong or losing what you have, or you're waiting for more information to feel kind of ready. You want to keep your options open, or you believe the decision is going to be permanent and you can't ever go back. And they're all very natural fears, but remember, they're all kind of chemical fears, right? When you're in the middle of the night, your brain is going override and there's a set of chemicals there that are basically false evidence appearing real fear, right? It's not happened yet. Right. And we have to remember that we anticipate so much when there's so much of that fear, which kind of stops us from taking some action. But the thing is to remember is you are in control of the outcome very, more so than not. And that happens through taking action. One of the ways you can do that is take a lesson from Seneca, Letters from a Stoic. He called it the premeditation of evils. We call it fear setting, where people always kind of do goal setting, like we talked about resolutions at the start of the year, but people never audit what they're worried about to kind of make it kind of stress test what fear looks like to see if it's really real or how can you actually shrink it down and make it smaller than it actually seems. And basically this process maps out what you can actually do about it.
And so what you'll find is throughout all of this, the implementation workshop that we do, like how we actually go through this is through all of these stages that you're working through. And the fear setting one is one of the ones that has the biggest impacts. And you're starting to reevaluate what you've done, what causes fear, and then what happens if that, what will happen as a result of that over the time. And at the same time, when we take that and we move it into the future, what happens as a direct result if we started to do things? Because everything that we do within, or what we promote anyway within Suffer and Soul, is taking things off your plate. This is the most important piece. Like we said earlier, that most people do too much stuff. Then if you're doing too much stuff, then you have to do something about that. And at the same time, when we're doing too much stuff, so much of that over the period of time has caused fear and stopped you doing stuff. So we're delicately questioning and balancing all of these things that we have inside of our life and starting to say, well, if we do more of these, what's going to happen? And if we remove these, what's going to happen? So much so that the end result after 12 months will be that experience where we had that graph with the 50% thing, where you'll be able to look back and say, wow, what a great year. That's what we want for every single person that moves through Suffer and Soul, or every single person that if all you do is the one thing, 1 year workshop, that's the end state that we're looking for.
So fear setting, as it looks there, this is kind of a screen grab from the workshop that we take people through. But it's exposing what's stopping you, and once you kind of you've figured out what that is or what your fear is, and you've defined it, you can basically start to rationally stop to prevent it, to make it kind of reversible, so it loses its power. And the way you do that is to you go through 3 stages. which is define what exactly could go wrong, prevent. There's always something you can do to reduce the probability of it happening, and then repair of it. There's someone that's always able to help. And the goal basically is to name it and make it survivable or repairable. Why are we talking about this so much? Because this is a process that I used, right? And here's a picture of me over the state of a couple of years. The picture on the left there was me deep in crisis. It was a culmination of 2 years of me being in and out of hospital with two very distinct and life-threatening conditions. That stint there, you can see, was spent during the second lockdown. I was kind of by myself, no one was around. And on top of everything else, I didn't know what was going to happen, but I had a near-death experience, right? During that time, I lost a business that I was building for retirement, had debts to pay. Obviously, COVID was still in effect, so the businesses weren't firing as we wanted them to. And things were just going wrong in personal life and business life as well, where we had a lot of business issues that were not of our making, but we got accused of and sort of controlled through courts, through people trying to sue us and put us through tribunals, all of which we were exonerated. But alongside that, my wife's dad was dying as well. We just had this constant like domino effect of awful things happening to us, where you kind of like sit around and you think, what are we doing and why are we doing it? But ultimately, this was me ignoring the signs that had been going on for years. And this was me where my house was truly on fire, right? And I'm inside of it thinking about what does it all kind of mean? And when you've got you think you've got problems, but when you would get a severe health problem, you realize you've only got one problem, right? And that's when you truly find out what matters. So we had no idea what the future held for us, right? But fear setting is something that I've used for a long time, and we used it for many, many decisions. And so we used it again here. And this is, you can see my family sat down there, and we're all doing it together, right? We were all invested in the understanding. The big question was, do we leave the UK? What happens to our businesses? How do we mitigate all these things? What are we going to do for money? How are we going to apply money differently? All these different things. What are we going to do? What are we going to do about the kids' schooling? All these different things, right? The upshot was using fear setting and projecting forward in terms of what we did is that once we recovered, and it was still during lockdown, we were able, the only place we could go, literally, that Boris Johnson would let us go to was Mexico. And guess who was in Mexico at the time? My good friend and brother, Danny here. And we weren't allowed to leave Mexico. That's the only place we could go. So this is where, if you've seen our other calls on vagabonding, we kind of had to completely let go and see where the wind took us, right? But that took us on an odyssey as a family for 20 countries. I counted them the other day. Now 9,000 photos during that period. Obviously, thousands of memories with as a family.
Obviously, you didn't count those like 1, 2, 3.
No, well, that's how I blocked out my time in a calendar, right? I just count all my photos. But hundreds of new phones, new friends, all these different opportunities from businesses. This is where Sovereign Soul was born during this plan, during this solidified anyway, and ended up in a new country because my compass, I realized through that process, was able to point in a true north because we had something that really was understanding what was pushing us and what was pulling us, right? And this is our hope and our hope for you guys as well. And we're just here as evidence that the process truly works.
Yeah, and I can't believe that's Dylan. That's crazy, isn't it? Coming to Mexico. All right.
It's all as me now.
And I'm really fortunate I've not had a health scare like Richard, but working and so closely with him over the years, and I love him like a brother. Like I leverage this to find my own gratitude for health. Like I've got my own story. Look, all of us have got our own crap, right? And it's not about comparing crap, but when someone else goes through something, we can still learn from it. Will it be enough that we don't have it happen? That goes back to the last thing you all pressed 1 in. I hope so. I'd love it if I learned my lesson the first time, every single time. The same time, probably life would be a bit more boring. If we all had one lesson, we learned from it, we never did it again. By the time I'm going to say 25, 30, you'd be God, right? And so there is that side to it. So the key thing is to take away from these things, gratitude, to take away from these things what we're going to do for our own life.